Brilliant. Torben, thank you very much and welcome everybody. Before I do start and introduce myself, I just want to thank Torben and also Common Europe for hosting this webinar sponsored by Help Systems. It's great to be among so many familiar names, and there's some great people in here who have not had the pleasure of meeting yet. If you haven't attended any of the Common Europe events, I strongly suggest you do. I was very lucky to be out in Sweden just last week at Torben and the team. It's great places to go for networking, great information, and guess what? It's a lot of fun too, so I thoroughly recommend that. So thank you very much. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Donna McCall. I'm the Director of EMEA Technical Services here in EMEA. I have the luxury of working with many health system solutions. I have the luxury of providing technical services for support, development, installations, configuration, and consultancy as well. I'm very lucky to be working here. I'm very lucky to be working here at Health Systems with an amazing team that we are lucky enough to have the backing to attract, and none more so than Debbie Sogan, who we managed to, I don't know how we did it. We enticed her to come and work for us a year or so ago, and we're so lucky to have her. A little bit about Debbie before I do hand over to her. So Debbie's recognised worldwide. A lot of you know her already. She's recognised worldwide as an expert on IBM backup and recovery, disaster recovery, and high availability. And prior to joining us, Debbie worked at IBM for a number of years. I know you can't tell by looking at that picture, but she was actually at IBM for 37 years as she's the technical owner of the IBM backup and recovery. She's also the IBM National Lead for awards for IBM Resiliency Services. She's a Common Gold Medal speaker. I can't remember many places in the world I've been where I haven't had the pleasure of seeing Debbie speak. And she's very keen and very happy and very open and honest and likes sharing her knowledge, speaking at conferences, user groups. She publishes articles and obviously on webinars such as this, where we have the luxury of Debbie's experience. She's very passionate about solving business continuity issues and providing the best solutions for customers. Today, Debbie, as I said, she works at Health Systems now. She heads up the Business Continuity Services team at Health Systems, which was formed because Debbie was joining. Somebody wanted to do it for a long time, and we needed Debbie to pull all that together. So whether you just get started with business continuity for IBM or whether you already have software solutions in place, Debbie and her rapidly expanding team can provide the attention and expertise that you need, so you don't have to worry about it too much. So that's me introducing myself and also introducing Debbie, because Debbie's got lots of talking to do. Just before we start, I want to ask all of you a favour. I mean, I'm really appreciative that you're all taking time to attend. Would like to ask a favour. We do have 3 polling questions that we'll be asking throughout the webinar. And we're going to ask the first polling question now. So Torben's going to put a polling question up on the screen, if you would, please. You can see that for yourself. How long have you been using BRMS? So if you would all go ahead and please answer that for us, it'll be really useful. And it just helps shape how Debbie, what information she imparts throughout the webinar. So we'll just keep that up for, say, 5 seconds or more. Quite interesting how many people have more than 20 years, but it's very mature solutions, so we're not too surprised. Okay, Torben, if you could close that, that'd be good. Now, I'm presuming you can see the results, Torben.
Yes, I can. So I would say, do you want the result already?
Yes, please, yeah.
10% more than 20 years, and 48% 10 to 20 years, and 24% 5 to 10 years, 19% 1 to 5 years, 0% less than a year. So they are all, they know the tool.
Fantastic. They're in the right place then, so it's great. Thank you very much, Torben. Now, before I hand over to Debbie, I just want to tell you something that happened back in June 2017, something that Health Systems is extremely excited about and extremely privileged. Health Systems and IBM entered into an agreement which effectively transfers the IP rights of 3 IBM products to Health Systems, which are PowerHA for I, Rational Developer for IBM I, AIX and Linux, and also, not surprisingly, BRMS for I. Now, why did they do that? Well, IBM, just like us, we develop software, provide services. You know what, sometimes there's difficulty allocating resource to make the best of some of the best solutions. So look for a partner, and Help Systems, we put our hand up and we very happily volunteered, and we now work with IBM, or on behalf of IBM, very much a partnership for their solutions that I mentioned, including BRMS. In the agreement, IBM can still sell, they do sell the solutions and provide support, but Help Systems maintains the source codes, we add customer enhancements, and we can do level 3 support. And so really we're delivering the roadmap for the solutions I mentioned, including BRMS. We're really generally proud. I think it shows that what an amazing company Help Systems is, and the trust that companies such as IBM put in Help Systems as well. And that's why I say I'm really, really pleased that we've got Debbie here with us now as well. So Debbie, I've kept everybody waiting long enough, so I can pass over to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Donnie. So Donnie did mention that I spent almost 38 years at IBM, but somebody did remind me that I always like to remind the audience that I actually started when I was 10. So not as old as I could be, since I started very young, like to remember that. If you ever wondered who was the person that actually tested backups and doing recoveries, that was me. So I really enjoyed doing that. I started with the first tape drive on AS400. If any of you remember that, that was a 9347 real tape drive that we had. We were supposed to come out with quarter-inch cartridge, but it wasn't quite ready. And that's when my journey began in backup and recovery. And I just realized how important it was for customers to be able to have good backups and then be able to recover their system. And then as the years progressed at IBM, we realized that we needed to add things that did tape management and actually helped you with recovery. And that's where BRMS came into play, Backup Recovery and Media Services. So today I'm going to take you through a bit of an overview of BRMS. I'm going to talk about virtual tape libraries. We'll get into making your save and your restores faster with doing some parallel saves. There's some function for automatic media duplication, and then, you know, really finding out what you have missed on your backups. There's a way to do faster IFS saves. A lot of you have already invested in FlashCopy Toolkit, but if not, we'll talk about that and how that can actually reduce your backup window. And, you know, with auditing today that we have to do, there's a lot of reporting in BRMS that can help you out. I'll go over some highlights of that. And if you have a large enterprise, there's some function in BRMS that can help you out there. And what I mean a large enterprise is, you know, maybe you have, you know, 10 or more LPARs, maybe even 5 that this can help you with. There's some new function as far as cloud backup. I really want you to understand what that means in your environment. And then there is a BRMS wiki page. So those are the things that I've tried to pull together, the things that I see BRMS customers not realizing that they have today, and they can take advantage of these functions. Now, IBM's strategic backup management product continues to be BRMS. Now that I've joined Help Systems, after my retirement from IBM, I was thrilled that I could still help customers with backup recovery, and then I was even more thrilled when we got the IP for BRMS, as I could continue with the development team and lead the product into adding new enhancements and really make sure you have the function that you need. So when I first started testing backup recovery, I did a lot of save option 21s or save option 22 or save option 23. And then I had a lot of tapes, but I wasn't really good about tracking which tapes had what on them from what system. And that's where BRMS comes into play. It's what's going to manage your media and the data that's on your media. So you can get rid of those spreadsheets or however you're tracking that data, or however you're keeping track of where the media is going off-site. And then another advantage is the automation. Because before BRMS, I lived very close to IBM, and I didn't have any automation. So I would have to drive back and forth, and sometimes this would be in the evening to change out tapes and keep the backup running. And I had no way of just scheduling it and have it all happen for me. And BRMS is going to help you with that, especially when you have a tape library or a virtual tape library. One of the key things with BRMS is the recoveries, and that's what I'm very passionate about. I worked for almost 18 years in IBM resiliency services, where customers come in and test recoveries, or they have actual disasters. So I've been involved in terrorist attack assisting customers, or natural disasters like hurricanes and floods. And that's where I understand it's very critical that you have a process that's going to help guide you through your recovery. And that's what BRMS is going to give you. It's going to tell you what tapes you need, and it's going to guide you through that whole process. It also helps you with all the reports that it has, and it's really determining what you have saved, what you haven't saved. And it's, you know, going to give you support as far as the capability of doing some software tape encryption. And then there's the BRMS Enterprise function, which came out in 7.1. So you have your base function with BRMS, and that really is planning your backup. What am I going to back up, and how am I going to back it up? And it's also going to incorporate the media management. It's going to give you full tape library support, whether that's a physical tape library or virtual tape library. And there is also a graphical user interface with BRMS if you choose to use that. The second option of BRMS is called the network function. And this is really where I have multiple LPARs or multiple systems, and I want to share a tape library, or I want to share a virtual tape library. So I can network those systems together to share that media that I have in that tape library. And then we have a third option in BRMS, the advanced feature. And this is really archival storage management. And this is what comes into play when you want to archive data. And by archiving data, I mean moving those libraries or folders or spool files off of the system. And once we move them off the system, then we're not backing them up all the time. And then with BRMS, if we need those objects and they're sitting in our tape library or our virtual tape library, we can dynamically pull them back on the system with BRMS. Virtual tape libraries. Many customers are looking at virtual tape libraries today. What a virtual tape library is really its disk. And you're doing disk-to-disk backups with a virtual tape library, but it actually looks like an IBM I tape device. And within the virtual tape library, you will create your tape volumes that you want to use for backup. Most of the VTLs will have encryption, and the idea is that you have a local virtual tape library, and you're able to replicate that virtual tape library to an off-site location. So in this scenario, what we see here locally connected to our IBM I, we have a virtual tape library. This is what we back up to locally. And we can do all the backups that we do today, including a save sys. And so that's very important that we can do the backup strategy that we have today. And then we can replicate our local virtual tape library to a remote site with another virtual tape library. And this is where it helps us. It eliminates the handling of those physical tapes and then backing up and then having to move those tapes off-site. You actually get your data replicated off-site. So where that's going to help you is that your data is already available to you off-site and ready to go to start the recovery. And especially if you have a lot of small LPARs and you don't want to have tape drives and tape cartridges that are very large in your environment to keep backing those up. Now, sometimes you might be using replication, and this could be logical replication, or it could be hardware replication, maybe with Robot HA or Power HA. Maybe you're already going to have your data replicated off-site, but you can still use a virtual tape library to do your backup. But I also do recommend that you have physical tape copies also, which you can do off your virtual tape library. Now, there are some considerations. And one of those is the performance with a virtual tape library. Now, if you're using very fast LTO drives, some of the latest drives that we have today, and it's connected via fiber, you may not get the same performance going to a virtual tape library just using one virtual drive. So what you want to do is usually create more virtual tape drives within that virtual tape library to help with the performance. In some cases, you're coming from old tape technology and you go to VTL, and yeah, it's much faster than what you had before. You'll need some bandwidth because you'll be replicating those saves, but the bandwidth is usually reduced because of data deduplication that happens with a virtual tape library, and that means only the delta changes are going to be sent over to the remote site. So it's reduced bandwidth that you use when you have the data deduplication. And you really want to have a local VTL and a remote VTL. The remote VTL is for your disaster recovery, and then if you do disaster recovery from your VTL, it's there at the remote site where you need it. So I talked about parallel saves, and maybe we want to do parallel saves with a virtual tape library. BRMS came out with parallel saves. And this is really probably when we have had 3590 drives. I remember doing it a lot with the 3590 drives. And I remember instead of using one 3590 drive, we could, maybe have 4 of them, and that would make our backup go faster. And so with BRMS, you can actually take a large library, a large object, or a list of large objects, and then we're going to spread that data onto multiple tape or virtual tape drives in parallel. And so this is really designed to improve the performance of these very, very large objects. It's not for your small objects, because when we create this type of save, we create what we call a media definition, and this gets written at the beginning of every tape, so there's a little bit of overhead for that. And so if you had a lot of small objects, you spend more time, trying to set up that environment. So very large objects, maybe it's your 100 gig or 200 gig library that you have. You do want to have the same number of devices on the restore as you do on the save, because the idea with this is bits of the data get written to all of the tapes, and during the restore it would be looking for a little bit of the data from tape 1, and then it's going to want to go to tape 2, and then it's going to want to go to tape 3. So you want to have the same number of drives, otherwise you would be spending a lot of time unloading and unmounting and then remounting the tapes that are required. So with this type of save, make sure you have the same number of drives on the restore. And then we also came out with another way to do parallel saves, and this is what we call parallel serial saves. And this is using the IBM special values within BRMS to do those saves. You have the IBM libraries, you have the all user libraries. You could also split this up between your production or test libraries, or even at an ASP level. And this is where we take those, say, 3 tape drives that you have or 3 virtual drives that you have, and we're going to spread those objects out, but it's going to be at the library level. So we will restore at the library level also. The way that you can submit multiple restores within BRMS, when you have saved this way, you can do that through batch by using a special value called volume set. Now, within BRMS, if you decide to do a list of libraries, BRMS is going to determine what's going to be the best spreading for you. So they will decide whether it's really large and I need to do a parallel type of save, or if I'm going to split it up at the library level. Now, another thing that you may not be aware of is you can actually take your full system backup, and within BRMS, it's called star system. This is the equivalent of an option 21 save. And what BRMS is going to do when you tell it to use parallel, say you go in there and you say, I want to use 2 virtual drives with my star system backup control group. It will use 1 drive for the save sys, and then it will use 2 drives for the IBM portion and 2 drives for the all user, and then it will use 1 drive for the DLO, and then it will go to using 2 drives again for the IFS, and then it will spread the data for the IFS. So it is possible to just do a full system backup and use multiple drives. What I have found with most VTLs, and when you're looking at creating those multiple virtual tape drives, there's kind of a sweet spot. And it's usually between 3 to 4 virtual tape drives per fiber card. Any more than that, then you now have a bottleneck because you can only drive the performance through the fiber card that you have attached to those virtual tape drives. Automatic media duplication. So this can be specified on your media policy. And this is the idea that I'm doing a virtual tape save. And this may be the integrated virtual tape, or it could be a virtual tape library, but I need to make a copy to my physical media. So on my control group backup, after each save is complete within that backup, the duplication will start. And it's possible to have multiple duplications with asynchronous jobs running. The jobs will run on the queue that you specify on your system policy. And when the duplication jobs have started, if there's not enough devices, it will wait for the devices to become available. And if the system is in a restricted state, the jobs for duplication will wait in the job queue until it's actually active. Once the backup completes, then all the control is back to you, the user, and those physical duplications can continue in the background. Sometimes when we're running backups, not everything is getting backed up. And this can be because of object locks. Users are on the system, they're using the object, and it doesn't get backed up. There is a capability within BRMS to create a missed object policy. This is for your library objects in your IFS. And what BRMS is going to do for you is to create a list of those locked objects during the save. And you can specify this in your control group attributes and on the backup policy. There's a missed object policy parameter. The default is *none. If you want to create one, you would give it a name. And you can clear this control group after every time you run it, or you can keep those missed objects within that control group that you have now created. So now you can look at this control group and say, oh, these objects didn't get saved because there were locks on them, and possibly you can run the new control group when the objects are no longer locked, and you can use that new control group. So here's an example of having a missed object control group. It's called missing control group. And if I go down here, I can see that it's created a link list for me. So it has created a list of the objects in the IFS directory that did not get saved because they were locked. And I could try and run this missed object control group later to back up those missing objects. Now we always want to work on how we can make our backup go faster. That seems to be an ultimate goal that all of us have. And this particular parameter I really love because customers have come up to me at Common and they have showed me their performance report and they said, look, Deb, my backup for my IFS ran 60% faster because I tried this parameter. And then just last year, someone found out about this parameter and said it was the best Christmas present that they ever had. And you may not be aware of this, so I want you to know about this, and it's called the ASYNCBRING parameter. And what this does is it will bring those IFS objects into memory asynchronously. Now, your performance improvement depends on your directory tree structure. We can't always say that you're going to get better performance with this. Sometimes you don't. But in some cases, you get significant performance improvement. So I always recommend to customers, try it and see what you get. If it doesn't help you or it's worse, you can turn it back off. But most likely, you'll see some performance improvement. And where you set this up at are a couple different places. You could change it in the backup policy for BRMS. And you see the asynchronous bring parameter. You would change that to yes, or you can change it on the actual backup control group that you're running, and this is when you do the option 8 to change those attributes. You will see the asynchronous Spring. Here it's pointing to the backup policy, which we would have changed to yes, or you can put yes right here on your control group attributes. And because we do have a graphical user interface, you would also have the parameter in the BRMS Navigator for I to change asynchronous spring. So any good results you get with that, I'd be interested in hearing that. Please email me, let me know. And then another way to significantly reduce your backup window is the FlashCopy Toolkit for backups. And many of you have gone to SAN storage today, and that's an advantage of going to SAN storage is we do get the capability of doing this FlashCopy. Just a couple weeks ago, I worked with a customer that had implemented FlashCopy Toolkit and then was looking to implement BRMS, and BRMS is fully integrated with the FlashCopy Toolkit. What happens by implementing the FlashCopy Toolkit for backups is we get a point-in-time copy. So the applications are coalesced, the transactions are put on hold, and in a few minutes, we have an exact copy of the LPAR that you want to back up. So what I mean about online backups, it means your production system is still online while we're doing the backup. So after the FlashCopy, the production system is up and running, and the save is being performed on that FlashCopy. Once the save is done on the FlashCopy, then the BRMS save information is sent back to the production system just as if it had occurred on production. And sometimes customers will say, well, that sounds good, but I'm sure I can't do a full system restricted state backup. But you can do a full system restricted state backup. That's a big advantage of having the FlashCopy is actually you can do a full system restricted state backup every day if you want to now. And that will make your recoveries easier and simpler. And we're going to take a break for another polling question right now.
Thank you, Torben, for putting that up. So what's your biggest fear about your backups? Multiple choice? Is it bad and or lost media? We're not backing up all the right items. We have no recovery site. We don't know how to restore what's on media, and we don't know how to use BRMS. So if you could help us out and very kindly select your answer or answers, we'd very much appreciate it. And it's good to give Debbie a slight break to just take a drink of water. And I'm sure you'll all agree, I've listened to Debbie before on more than one occasion, and I always learn something new. So it's I'm literally sitting here listening to every single word. Okay, Torben, you could close that. That'd be good. Thank you.
Okay, some questions. People are still answering, so I give it them 2 more seconds.
Please, yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I think we stop it right there. The result would be 48% bad and or lost media. And we're not backing up all the right items. 14% have no recovery site, and we don't know how to restore things. 5% we don't know how to use BRMS. So I guess most are worried about the media itself and what they are backing up.
Okay. Thanks very much. Debbie, back to you.
Thank you. That was a good polling there. Just as a side, I always like to talk about the media, and it seems like you're concerned about bad or lost media, but it's also important to get that media off-site. I remember when I was working in the Rochester lab and I had a call one day, and the call said, can you read tapes that are wet and muddy? And it turned out their strategy, it was a small bookstore, their strategy was to have one tape in the drive at night, and then the second tape went on top of the drive. So I called it the 2-tape rotation in the drive, on top of the drive, never went off site. And so I did say, well, send us the tapes in, and they sent the tapes into the Rochester lab. They were in a Ziploc baggie. There was still water and mud in there. I think maybe they were trying to preserve the bits, not sure. So we took those tapes and we actually dried them off with a hairdryer in Rochester. We got lucky this time. We were able to read one of the tapes. So I don't want that to be your strategy. I want you to make sure you do get those tapes off site. And that's really because, you know, fire, flood, who knows what kind of disaster you're going to have. Moving on within BRMS, there's a lot of auditing to make sure that you're getting good backups. One of those is the backup plan. That will list all your backup policies and the items that make up each policy. And then I really focus on the disaster recovery reports. You know, when I help a customer with a BRMS backup strategy that they have, the first thing I say is show me your recovery report, because that's going to tell me a lot about what they're not backing up. So the report is going to have the steps to recover the system. It's going to have another report. It's going to tell you which tape volumes you need for system recovery. And it's also going to give you the disk pool configurations set up to set up the new system, or how the system needs to be set up at your disaster recovery site. A lot of these reports are really good for your auditors too, because you can show them to them and say, yes, I'm backing up everything. My recovery report looks good. It doesn't say that I'm not saving anything. And then another report is really your media movement, and it tells you when your volumes go off site and when your volumes are scheduled to come back on site. So it's, you know, getting the tape volumes back on site that you need for backup, but more importantly, getting those tape volumes off site in case of a disaster. Now, this is something, if I see this on your recovery report, I'm going to say, whoops, you have 6 objects that weren't saved. This is calling that to your attention. If you look at your BRMS recovery report and you do not see this message, that's good news, because that means everything that you selected to save did get saved. But in this case, these objects didn't get saved because they were locked objects. And that's something you want to look for within the BRMS recovery report, is go through that column that says not saved and see where those objects were, and then we need to remedy and see if those are important objects that you're going to need for a recovery. So the recovery report will show you that. It will show you the libraries, it will show you the time saved, it will show you the volumes, and it will show you what, and there's a column called saved, number, and then a not saved. You're really looking for the not saved to be 0. This is something that a lot of customers get excited about, and they don't know that it even exists in BRMS, and it's called performance statistics. BRMS now has a backup statistics report, and you get this report by doing a print report BRM star backup stat, and it's going to create a spooled file for you. And you can start looking at some performance data with your backups and compare those from day to day. So if for whatever reason your backups start running a lot longer, you can take a look at this report and say, oh, is it in my user profiles, or is it a user library? Is it in the IFS? So make use of the BRMS backup statistics report. Some of us work in an environment where we have a lot of BRMS LPARs. We manage a lot of systems or LPARs, and we don't want to go to every single LPAR or system that we have. So BRMS came out with the enterprise function. With the enterprise function, you get a central enterprise hub. And this is for your large BRMS networks, and it's going to pull the BRMS information from the nodes that you set up that are defined to the hub. And you're going to get notifications and verifications if the backup ran, if the backup failed. So it really helps you administrate and manage those backups and restores from a central enterprise system. Now within BRMS, you can have multiple BRMS networks and going to the centralized system, or you can have one BRMS network within the centralized enterprise hub system. This is not available in green screen. So this is a GUI interface, so you could use your Navigator for I with the web interface, or you could use the Navigator I GUI, and then now in 7.3 we have the web client with the new Dojo interface. The BRMS hub and the node requires you to have BRMS on all those systems. For the hub system, you're going to need the network feature and the advanced feature of BRMS to implement the enterprise function. And then at 7.1, there is a PTF that you would need for the other systems in the BRMS network. Just be aware of that. Hopefully, you guys are upgrading to 7.3 Shortly 7.4 will be coming out. There'll be new function in BRMS when we get to 7.4. But there is some new function that has come out already, and maybe you've heard about this, and it's called BRMS Cloud Backup. BRMS Cloud Backup. I like to explain what this is, and what this is using integrated virtual tape saves. Those are tape saves that are on the system, the IBM I itself. So the save happens to the system, and then you can transmit those saves to the cloud. It could be IBM software, it could be the AW Amazon S3, or it could be IBM Cloud Objects Cloud Server, came from CleverSafe, or you could actually FTP these virtual tape saves to another server that you have. This requires you to be at 7.1. It requires you to have the base license of BRMS, and you need media and storage extensions, option 18. This is required for BRMS in general. In order to do the cloud type of backups, you would need cloud storage solutions. This was implemented and provided by Rocket Software. The first option that you would need for doing cloud costs you like $2,400 per LPAR. If you would like compression or encryption, it's $1,000 per LPAR. So some advantages is if you're saving locally to the virtual tape save on the system, because you're able to retain those saves for a while, you would not have to recall the tape media. It would be right there on the system. It reduces your need to send tapes offsite, and depending on your strategy, it may improve your recovery time because you're not waiting for the tapes to arrive for the recovery. And it might improve your recovery point because the data resides at the remote site, and you can have multiple save of change data. So you don't have to get tapes offsite to the remote site. Some things to consider though, and I always call considerations restrictions, and one of those, you have to consider performance on restore for this item. So if you want to restore a very, very small file and you've backed up the data to the cloud, we need to restore that entire virtual tape volume. Now the default in BRMS means we're going to restore 30 gig of that tape volume. You can change those defaults, but be aware of that. You'll have to bring the 30 gig down. It restores the virtual tape save to the system, and then you can restore the file from there. There are some PTFs now available. Originally, you could only restore the save data in a file or a library to the same system. So the PTFs are available to restore that file, library, or whatever it is that's in the virtual tape save to another system. Now, disaster recovery, you can do disaster recovery. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Where I do see the BRMS cloud backup really fitting in is data archival, and that's going to be available later this year. And that's going to be the full archive support, and that's where we take that data that you're not really using and you don't need on your system every day, and we can send it to the cloud. And then if we need to retrieve it from the cloud, we can dynamically retrieve it to the cloud and put it back on your system. So I think the BRMS cloud backup function has a good fit in the archival support. Now, the other considerations I want you to remember is this is implemented with the integrated virtual tape that's on the IBM I. So first, it's going to save to the disk. And so the performance there is not going to be as fast as going directly to a physical tape. Disaster recovery, you're going to need a recovery server. So is that going to be a co-location? Is that going to be a service provider? Where am I going to recover to in case of a disaster? Perhaps I'm doing HA for disaster recovery, and the cloud backup is just in case I need it. That might be a good solution too. But in order to do recovery from the cloud, and this is very important, the base system and the BRMS information, and BRMS does provide a control group for this will need to be burned to a DVD or a tape. You'll have to create that image from the cloud, so you probably want to plan this ahead of time, because you're going to need that to do a bare metal restore and create that environment. Or perhaps I'm going to have a preloaded system sitting somewhere for me ready to go so that I can retrieve the rest of my backups from the cloud. Because you will need to download from the cloud, or if you have sent the data to another server, you're going to have to FTP those virtual volumes to the system. Once they're on the system, then you can restore your data. So some things to be aware there. And now we do have another polling question for you.
Thank you, Torbjörn. So the question is, as you can see, anything you'd like more help with? Let's face it, we've got the best person in the world to be able to help you with that. So anything you'd like more help with, backup recovery best practices, your BCP planning and testing, HA, high availability software or hardware. Perhaps you've got some projects coming up that you might need a hand on for IT automation or security, or none of the above. And if you're like me, I'll be answering 1, 2, 3, or 4. I wish I could answer all 4. But certainly none of the above. So I think we all keep very, very busy in this world, don't we?
Okay, answers still coming in. Looks like backup recovery best practice, of course. High availability software or hardware is also up there. Some people want to have help with business continuity planning and testing. Sure, I closed the poll.
Thanks. Those are great answers. And one thing, you know, whether you're looking at backup recovery or you're looking at high availability, I think there's only 3 key things to remember. And I like to remind my customers of this. Number 1 is to test, number 2 is to test, and number 3 is to test. And then hopefully you'll be in good shape. But those are the things that are really important. It's all about testing, whether you're recovering from tape, whether you're doing high availability and doing a role swap. Now, another thing, I've taken you through, like, you know, maybe 10 things today with BRMS. There are a whole lot of other things with BRMS, and there's a lot of new things that have been coming out with BRMS. So I like to point you to the BRMS Wiki page, and this is where you can find all the latest information for BRMS. So keep that in mind. There is a BRMS Wiki page, and that will be where you'll find all the latest. We keep that up to date on a regular basis. And now I'm going to turn it over to Donnie.
Debbie, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going to wrap up the webinar with the next 2 or 3 slides. I just want to start by thanking Debbie. I know you mentioned this earlier. It's absolutely true. Every time I listen to you speak, whether it's a live session or on your super informative webinars, I generally always learn something new. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do that. I do want to finish off. I talked about some of the great ways that Debbie and the team can actually help us all on this call. And a team of help systems can help make your life much easier and also get the best use out of your, let's face it, sometimes expensive software investments. Now, if you've been using BRMS for years or whether you're relatively new to it, as you've seen during this webinar, there's so much more you can do with it and so much, just many items and facilities already in there you can make best use of. Now, here at Help Systems, we do lots of things. We have a mission. It's an important mission. It's to provide IT management software and services. And the phrase we use is to expertly solve business problems with elegant solutions. And you can see for the slide here just some of the areas that we excel in. We do have a number of software solutions, a number of services. So I'm going to spend just a moment on this slide, if I may. So some of the software solutions that we have include Robot HA, so Robot High Availability. We've had that for maybe 1.5 years now, 2 years. It's a really neat solution. It's worth you having a look at. It provides high availability software replication. It's great in its own, or you can use it harmoniously, Power HA from IBM, and that will give you comprehensive data replication as well as high availability for your IBM I, keep it totally secure. If you look to the next icon here, you can see that with BRMS and Robot Save, we've got you fully covered for your data backup management. Now, Robot, as you probably know, is one of our pretty much our key strategic solutions that we have, and Robot Solution Set extends It gives you industrial strength, superb automation, monitoring, alerting, as well as the backup recovery. And we've got literally thousands, and I mean thousands of direct clients. We've got a huge and rapidly increasing number of cloud-hosted managed services clients too. And we offer lots of solutions for them, but we do actually specialize in offering a managed backup and recovery service. We've got DR as a service and also disaster recovery on demand. And that's another reason that we're lucky to have Debbie and the team on board. I do want to finish that. I do want to highlight the amazing business continuity consultant services teams that Debbie leads. It's really based on Debbie's industry knowledge and her expertise that binds together and really drives the offerings that we have for you in our backup and recovery assessments, business continuity architecture, disaster recovery, and role swap testing. I like to say, you're not on your own. You can use help systems and Debbie's team to really help you and make sure that everything you've got is kept in the way that it should be. Now, I'm really delighted to tell you as well that Debbie very kindly personally agreed to offer each and every one of you who attended this free of charge. Now, I'll say that a bit slower, free of charge, 60-minute consultation to discuss business continuity solutions. And that's for all of you who have attended or even registered today. And that's really very kind of Debbie. So thank you very much. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. This is literally the last slide. What I did want to say, we've obviously concentrated on backup and recovery, disaster recovery, and the services that we offer around that today. And Help Systems does a lot more, not just that, we do a hell of a lot more as well. And you can see from here, there'll be some familiar names on there. Every time I show the slide, people go, oh, I didn't know that was you. I didn't know that was Help Systems. So just have a little look at this and you can see that we've really pretty much have every area of IT wrapped up as best we can. We do continuously develop. We do continuously look for strategic acquisitions as well. The pillars that we really specialize in, you can see here, ITOLs, business intelligence, cybersecurity, not just IBM, cross-platform as well. Now, I do just want to say one more time before I wrap up, Debbie, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Now, there's been some questions come in, but what I'm going to do is going to end the webinar now, and the questions that have come in, thank you for submitting them. We'll answer each and every one of them individually, so you will be hearing from us if you submitted a question. So, Torbon, thank you very much. Particularly Debbie, thank you very much, and everybody for attending. Really appreciate your time. It's been great spending time with you today.
Thank you very much, both from ComEurope also, and also thank you Help Systems for supporting the IBM community in the great way you do every day. Thank you both, and thank you all attendees, and see you at the local user group event soon. Bye bye.